Hello and welcome to the Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed and today we're going to be continuing our Space Marines chapters videos with the Deathwatch, another chapter that was voted for by you guys. Now just before we get started I want to make it clear that I'll be focusing on a Deathwatch in the wider lore, not the Deathwatch that is portrayed within the Deathwatch role-playing game. Although a lot of the lore relating to the Deathwatch is within those books, a lot of it is very specific to the locale of the Deathwatch role-playing game, which is the Jericho's Reach. Because the Deathwatch actually expands beyond the Jericho's Reach into the wider Imperium, a lot of that lore is a little bit too specific, so what I'll be doing is giving you a general overview. So, let's get started, shall we? Now, the Deathwatch is a very unique chapter within the Adeptus Astartes because they are dedicated to hunting Xenos. Now, they are actually a chamber militant of the Inquisition's Ordo Xenos, much like the Grey Knights are the chamber militant for the Ordo Malleus. And they are permanently seconded to the Imperial Inquisition and follow their orders exactly. Now, they do have a homeworld, contrary to popular belief, and that is Thalassa Prime, specifically the Inquisitional fortress on Thalassa Prime, which is the centre of the Ordo Xenos in the Imperium. Now, their colour scheme is actually completely black. This is because they've actually painted over the colours of their original chapter, although they leave their right hand shoulder pad clear to display their chapter symbol, and their left hand shoulder pad is the silver symbol of the Deathwatch, which I'll go into later. And their battle cry, of course, is "Suffer not the alien to live." The history of the Deathwatch is actually quite interesting, because it was formed during a conclave of the Ordo Xenos Inquisitional Lords, known as the Apocryphon Conclave on Orphite 4. Now, these Inquisitors predicted an age where alien kind could eventually overwhelm the Imperium itself and subsume humanity as a dominant race in the galaxy. Now, they sat for many years actually thinking about this problem and thinking how to combat it. After a great length of time and many strategies were postulated, one became clear to the Inquisitional Lords, and they actually then sent for the chapter masters of the Space Marine chapters in the Imperium. Now, many chapter masters responded and gathered at Orphite 4. Once there, the Inquisitors asked the chapter masters to consider their plan, and the masters of course did so, deliberating over one night to give their verdict. That they and the Inquisitors together would take a solemn oath and form a new chapter, one which would be drawn entirely from battle brothers from existing chapters. This alliance of chapters would be known as the Deathwatch, and it would stand guard against the dire predictions of the Apocryphon Conclave. Now, I just want to move on to a little bit of their background and how their recruitment works. Now, the Deathwatch, as I've mentioned, is made up of Marines that have been seconded from their native chapter, and come from across the Imperium to train and serve with the Deathwatch for an unknown length of time, rather than the Deathwatch actually recruiting Marines for itself. Now, all these Marines swear the Apocryphon Oath, which is a binding vow to serve the Deathwatch until they are released from their service to return to their chapter. Only the very best may serve in the Deathwatch, and any who are sent back to their chapter early because they are unable to complete the training to the standards required by the Masters of the Deathwatch is considered to be humiliated in both the eyes of himself and the eyes of his chapter. Now, they are usually attached after their training to giant orbital watch fortresses which spread across and even beyond Imperial space. And they also operate from secret bases which are scattered across the Imperium, usually hidden in asteroids, on death worlds, or places that are completely uninhabited apart from their hidden watch station. Now, as I've mentioned, their armour is painted almost entirely black to show their dedication to the Emperor above all others during their secondment, although their right shoulder pad is left in their chapter colours with their chapter symbol in order to not only honour their chapter, but to honour the machine spirit of their armour, who would become greatly perturbed if it was repainted entirely. Now, to symbolise that they are members of the Deathwatch beyond their black armour, they're given a larger silver shoulder plate which is attached to the left hand shoulder. Now, this is a symbol of the Deathwatch and it's very intricately carved, and it will also remain with the Marine even after they leave the Deathwatch, showing that they have served with this prestigious company and are one of the most elite in their chapter, even if they don't hold any rank. Now, there is no set length of time for how long a Deathwatch Marine will serve. It will be as long as it is deemed necessary. It can be for several decades, or it can even be for the length of one mission, although in Deathwatch terms a mission can last many years, so it will usually be a great length of time, and very rarely will it be for less than, say, 10 years, although it can happen. Once they return to their chapter, each Marine is bound by an oath of silence never to reveal what they have seen or done during their service to the Deathwatch, even to their closest brothers or the chapter masters, unless the need is most dire. Deathwatch missions can include cleansing Xenos, as you'd imagine, but they also have several other different types of mission, which can include capturing and recovering alien artifacts, and similar duties which involve dealing with aliens in some way, including escorting diplomats to deal with alien dignitaries, although this is a very rare type of mission. Sometimes they will even be dispatched to use alien weaponry against the aliens themselves, although this usually happens after a long period studying such weaponry to be sure of limiting its taint and being sure that it's not trapped and will damage the mission if it is used. Now, many Deathwatch missions are actually led by Inquisitors, but some may not be. They can be led by Watch Captains, Commanders, Squad Leaders, or even Librarians, who are considered to have quite a high standing within the Deathwatch, even though they will serve as equal ranked Marines. Now, the strategy of the Deathwatch is slightly different from that of other chapters, because they take pride in actually dealing with their enemies quietly and quickly, much like the Raven Guard in fact. They prefer stealth and subterfuge rather than an all-out attack, using shock and awe tactics in order to beat down the enemy. They will be trained in stealth tactics, in room-to-room clearing, and actually improving the rapidity of their assault, enabling them to operate very quickly as one unit, even though the Marines in the team come from many different chapters. Now, of course, the Deathwatch deal with all sorts of Xenos, the main enemies we all know, and many Xenos that we may never have even heard of in the lore, because they have of course been destroyed by the Deathwatch before they've even been heard about. However, they're currently focusing on the Tyranids, because they are the most prevalent and dangerous Xenos threat to the Imperium due to the rapidity of their assault across the Eastern Fringe. Now, the equipment of the Deathwatch is relatively similar to that of a standard Space Marine chapter, although the quality of the equipment they will be issued is usually much higher, due to the fact that they have inquisitional support to requisition very high quality supplies. Now, this will include using things like Stalker Bolters, which are dedicated snipering bolters with silence capabilities in ordering them to operate very quietly behind enemy lines. They will also be issued with specialist types of ammunition, such as Inferno Bolts, Kraken Penetrator rounds, Metal Storm frag shells, and Stalker silencer shells which go with the Stalker Bolter, which are all advanced and rare ammunition which are available to the Marine even after they leave the Deathwatch, although how that's supplied we don't know. Now, they do in fact have a chapter fleet as well. However, the fleet is usually made up of specialist bombardment craft which can enact an exterminatus upon a world which is lost to the Imperium. The Deathwatch also usually deploy from inquisitional black ships for planetary strike operations and to hide their specific movements from any who would watch for the approach of the Adeptus Astartes. Now, as I've mentioned, I won't be going into the Deathwatch pen and paper role-playing game. However, it is notable to point out that there are a lot of relics assigned to each individual watch station, which can be issued to a Deathwatch Marine in order for them to carry out their task with greater efficiency, and they are honoured to carry these relics for the length of time they are in service. However, after a mission is over, usually, unlike most Space Marine chapters, they will have to return the equipment they have been issued, because it is not for them, but for the Deathwatch, and it will be reissued to another Marine should they require it beyond that of the usual Marines. Now, something to mention is that not all Marines leave the Deathwatch after their secondment. Many can serve repeated times in the Deathwatch, and some are even permanently assigned to the Deathwatch in order to ensure a secure command structure and allow those Marines who are knowledgeable enough to continue fighting the enemy that they have grown used to fighting. Now, this does mean there are some Deathwatch members who have never returned to their homeworld after they have been seconded to the Deathwatch and consider it their primary chapter. Now, this may also include Deathwatch Dreadnoughts, which are very, very rare, but there are some that do exist because these ancient warriors who have served in the Deathwatch previously remain with the Deathwatch in order to provide knowledge and understanding to those who would come later. Now, one thing I want to mention about the Deathwatch is Black Shields. Now, Black Shields are a very interesting concept because they are Deathwatch Space Marines who do not reveal which chapter they are from. They arrive at the Deathwatch fortresses, usually with their armour already painted completely black, including both shoulder pads, which completely hides any identifying markings for this Marine. Now, usually it's thought that these are Marines who are either from chapters that have been destroyed, Marines who have left their chapter through some disagreement, or Marines who have once maybe been traitorous or have actually betrayed the Imperium in some way, and have returned to serve in the Deathwatch as penance. They will never be asked any questions, they will just be taken directly to the Watch Commander, who will evaluate whether or not they will allow this Marine to serve. Usually they are allowed to serve, and many of them are very quiet Marines who will not reveal much about themselves and will only serve as far as to help complete their missions. Now, what I'd also like to mention is that it's not every Space Marine chapter that provides towards the Deathwatch. Some may not know about it, some may not even have the numbers to provide extra few Marines to the Deathwatch because they are so limited in their own numbers. However, these are some of the Marine chapters we know do actively provide towards the Deathwatch, even if they are no longer a sufficient fighting force. These are the Angels of Vermilion, the Black Consuls, the Black Dragons, the Black Templars, the Blood Angels, the Blood Ravens, the Brazen Minotaurs, the Carcharodons, the Crimson Fists, the Dark Angels, the Death Spectres, Salamanders, the Exorcists, the Flame Falcons, the Flesh Tearers, the Imperial Fists, the Lamenters, the Mantis Warriors, the Marines Malevolent, the Mortificators, the Praetors of Orpheus, the Raven Guard, the Red Talons, the Relicators, the Revilers, the Salamanders, the Scimitar Guard, the Scythe of the Emperor, the Sons of Antaeus, Space Wolves, Star Phantoms, Storm Wardens, Ultramarines, White Consuls, and White Scars. So that brings us to the end of my Deathwatch video. Now, of course, like I said, I haven't mentioned everything that comes in from the Fantasy Flight books, because although they are quite interesting, we're not sure exactly how much of the lore which is given there can be applied specifically to the official lore of Warhammer 40,000, although I have included some of it in my video today. Now, if you want to hear more about the Deathwatch pen and paper RPG, I suggest having a look at some of their rulebooks. They do have quite a lot of lore included within their pages, although, as always, I'm still not sponsored by Fantasy Flight Games. And so that's everything I wanted to say today. If there is something you think I've missed, do let me know in the comments below. We will be moving on to a new chapter next time, so do keep voting in the comments below. I think it's now between the Raven Guard and the Iron Hands as to who comes next in the videos. What will happen after I've done those two chapters will be I'll start up my Imperial Guard video, as I've promised several times over the last few months. We will then be intersecting the remaining Space Marine chapters videos with the starting Imperial Guard videos. So if you have any Imperial Guard units that you specifically want me to have a look at, do start mentioning those as well, although I can't promise we'll be dealing with them as soon as we will be dealing with the Space Marine chapters. So that's everything I wanted to mention today. As always, do vote in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on the Vaults of Terra.